Have you ever been in a conversation where you are forced to do all the talking and ask all of the questions? Maybe something like a bad date? When it comes to our intuition, being in action and speaking more than we are listening often gets in the way of actually hearing our inner wisdom. And being able to listen to that inner wisdom with clarity is what often leads us in the direction of our next right step in order to lead a happy life and have a happy career. Hi, I'm Kristen. I'm a veteran hiring manager turned executive career coach, helping mid to senior level corporate women rise through the ranks, get promoted, and transition into work they love. And the majority of time in my experience, that involves following their intuition. So one of my favorite quotes is by Deepak Chopra. He says that praying is when we are talking to God, but meditating is when we are listening to God. In my own experience, the listening part is so much more important than the talking. But I've often had clients say to me, I don't know what you're talking about when you say intuition, or it's really hard for me to hear or discern whether that's my intuition or that's something else. So today I want to clarify as to how we can cultivate that inner voice, that inner wisdom, and really listen to the programming from the divine rather than society itself that will ultimately lead to a happy life and a happy career. So number one, do not mistake your intuition for fear. One of the common problems I see is that women don't want to listen to their intuition when it takes them off course of the life that they have planned. And I know this because I used to be one of these people. I went to law school, I worked in politics, I had my life all planned out, I was getting married, I did get married, and I was going to have this quintessential DC life complete with the historic townhome. However, that was not my path. And the more I refused to listen to my intuition and acknowledge what I knew to be true, the more pain I caused me and at the time, my partner as well. And believe me, just because it is hard does not mean it is not worth doing. Maybe, for example, for you, your inner wisdom is now telling you that you should leave your corporate job and go teach yoga. But that doesn't mean that you have to upend everything at once. And I'm sure you're wondering, how am I going to pay my mortgage? How am I going to pay my student loans? And what I want to say is don't get too far over your skis if you're having these nods or you're wanting to go off course. The first thing you probably want to do is go to a yoga class or attend a, introduction to yoga teacher training in order to see if that is actually for you. Oftentimes our intuition won't lead us down a path that asks us to upend everything. It might just be an invitation to explore something that feels good and is enjoyable and see where that actually leads. And that leads me to number 2. Intuition does not have to be earth-shattering. I mean, sure, it can be if you're terribly off course, but in my opinion, if you are moving already in the right direction, what our intuition does is just provide some clarity about some subtle things that need to change. It might be as simple as a new role, a new boss, or even a new city that you are invited to explore. But one of the things that stands in our way is we, especially at work, have been taught to be so intellectual that we miss the cues from our feelings and from our body. Our body holds so much wisdom, and yet we're always in our head instead of here. We need to have more of a balance between the two. The act of being still, being away from distractions, turning our phone off, closing our eyes for as little as 10 minutes a day can actually be incredibly helpful as far as cultivating our intuition and our inner guidance. And that's maybe one of the best practices I can suggest is to just allow yourself to sit still and focus on your breath for 10 minutes every day with zero expectations at first. You might hear nothing, you might be annoyed, you might be angry, you might be frustrated, but getting in the habit of being in your body and paying attention to your breath can lead you on a path to cultivate that voice. And that leads to number 3, which is ask. So what I mean by this is a lot of times we have so much pressure and so much conditioning from society that it is hard to hear our intuition. We're often hearing our mother or our 5th grade teacher or our guidance counselor from high school instead of that divine inner wisdom. So one of the best practices I have is when I am in meditation and I have a thought about my next right step, I will ask, is this my conditioning? And so often I hear the word yes, and I know that is not the right thing to do. It's when I hear silence that I know this is guidance that I really genuinely need to heed and follow. Now, I have been meditating for close to 20 years at this point, and I still honor this practice. So if you are a new meditator or you're new to listening and being in your body and focusing on your breath, this can be a really helpful and powerful tool. And finally, number 4, practice and trust. I mean, it's pretty rare that somebody decides, I'm going to listen to my intuition and lead an authentic life, and then they're miraculously able to do so. It takes time to cultivate that divine wisdom, and it takes a lot of courage as well, because stepping into authenticity often means that you're not doing what the popular kids are doing, and you are going against the masses. One of the images that comes to mind when I think about listening to my intuition is George McFly from Back to the Future. You know that scene where he opens the door and expects to see Marty, and he's going to have this heroic scripted moment, and instead he finds Biff, and he could just walk away and slam the car door, but he says, no, Biff, you leave her alone. And he says it with a lot of fear and a lot of shaking in his voice. That to me is listening to our intuition and doing the morally correct thing, if that's what it calls us to do. Now we know that George was ultimately victorious, and we don't have those same guarantees. But a lot of times, especially in this moment, in this economy, that might mean confronting a bully at work. That might mean not being complicit in something that we know is morally incorrect. And while I'm admitting, yes, this can be super uncomfortable, and yes, this takes a ton of courage, what I'm saying is these practices are ultimately worth doing because they are going to lead you to life and work that you love. Now, I wanted to make this video today because work can often be such an overly intellectual place, and our intuition can be the last thing that we want to hear or the last thing we're encouraged to hear. But I want you to know that your path might not be typical, and that is okay. Not everyone is meant to be promoted or be a people manager or work in an office. The key to having work that you love is being able to discern what is right for you. And only you can know that. And that's why it's so important that your own voice is the loudest one in your head. Did you find this video helpful? If so, like, share, and subscribe. I come out with new videos each week, and I will see you then. Take care.